If your dream car is imported, brace yourself. Prices are soaring. Thanks to new tariffs, your wallet's about to take a hit. So what's going on? A 25% tariff on imported cars just kicked in, and it's set to spike prices by $5,000 to $15,000. That's a big chunk of change, right? Now, why is this happening? The US wants to boost local car manufacturing, but here's the catch. No car sold in the US is 100% American-made. We rely heavily on parts from countries like Mexico and Canada, and it's not just cars. Auto parts like engines and transmissions face tariffs starting immediately. So expect those repair bills to climb too. In a nutshell, these tariffs impact everyone, from car buyers to repair shops. So, before you hit the dealership, do your homework. Your wallet will thank you.
So following the Trump administration imposing 25% tariff on cars and automotive parts, this move has really impacted the automotive industry, and then there have been a lot of cry of people trying to speculate this will eventually make America great again by making these companies to relocate from countries from Canada, Mexico, and all these countries to bring the industries or the companies to the United States. But then one of the most important questions that we are really looking up to this is how this move is going to impact car prices in the United States. Because the administration intends that in the long run, Americans will have enough money in their pockets. Well, how? That the price of goods probably will fall, and Americans will get more jobs. But then probably they didn't analyze it in this perspective on how this move is going to affect the price of cars, mostly the short term, and even in the long run. So they want to break it down and look at how this move of imposing 25% tariff on cars, on the imports, cars, and this automotive parts, how it's really going to affect the prices of cars in the United States. First of all, we are looking at expert opinion. First, we're going to look at how the professors are viewing this and what they have to say on this. So let us take a listen.
So what Trump did essentially was to say that as from the 2nd of April, there's going to be 25% tariffs or a tax on all car imports from anywhere in the world. So essentially, car firms in Japan, in South Korea, in Europe, in Canada, in Mexico are going to be really heavily affected by this. It's not only cars, by the way. There was a later clarification to say also components, which is going to be self-defeating, I think, because ultimately what Trump wants is more production in the US, fewer imports, but that production in the US also depends on components. So ultimately, this is going to mean higher prices for US consumers, and it will add to inflation. The US is kind of cutting itself off from the rest of the world. US car makers tend to focus on big gas-guzzling pickups, which places like Europe, where gasoline is expensive, don't want to buy. So this is just going to isolate, I think, US producers even further. And we'll probably see the rest of the world just get on with it, trade more with each other, and leave the US out of it. I think it also will try to appeal to his core blue-collar, working-class base, although in the long run, I think there will be detrimental impacts because of higher costs in the US. But I think he will probably do it.
Now, there's also a known car expert that I believe most of you have come across him, called Ben Hardy. We want to listen because he's a car expert in this industry. He deals with sales and car reviews. So we want to listen on what his opinion regarding the imports and how these things are going to affect cars, because he's in this industry and he has the experience, he has the knowledge and the know-how on how this industry works. Let's take a listen on and see and listen to his view on this.
Let's answer the question that everyone cares about. Is this actually going to increase the prices of vehicles? And the jokes that I've been seeing on this are absolutely hilarious. Like, my favorite is the Honda Civic. Honda's already announced they're going to build the newest Civic here in the US. So everyone said the new Civic is going to be $50,000. So quickly, China. Not going to be a big deal whatsoever. I kind of mentioned that earlier in the video, but we already have really big tariffs against China. China doesn't really import that many cars to the US. Some of you might argue that because we have such big tariffs against China, this has caused the EV market in the US to be way more expensive than it has to be because Chinese EVs are significantly less expensive. That's a video for another day, but either way, I don't think it matters how big the tariffs are on China. It's not really going to change things all that much, because we've already had big tariffs on China. Now, one caveat to note is, some of the electronic components that are being put in cars, yeah, there is some of that could definitely swing the price one way or another, but I think what you'd more likely see is potentially the moving of the production of that over to the United States. I mean, we already have those big chip foundries that are going to be built here in the US. And so I think that's kind of already on its way. And so either way, I don't think the whole Chinese market thing is going to have as big of an impact as what people might think. The next market that's going to have a larger impact is the European market, but the impact is still not going to be as bad as what people might think. And it's because most European cars that are sold here in the US are luxury cars. There are a few non-luxury cars, think like Volkswagen, for example, and Volkswagen actually imports most of their cars, the Volkswagen Group rather. And so if there is a tariff implemented, it'll have a huge negative impact on the Volkswagen Group. But either way, because there's not that many non-luxury cars sold from Europe to the US, that means that tariffs aren't going to have that big of an impact on the customers. Well, it will still have an impact, and here's what the impact will look like. Either some production will have to be shifted towards the US, which could definitely increase prices if a manufacturer has to build a new factory, all that kind of stuff. But they also have to keep their prices in line to be competitive. And that's something that everyone needs to remember, right? Market dynamics, supply and demand. A manufacturer can only charge so much for a particular type of car. And so I think is more realistic is we would just see a lot of cars exit the US market. And I think what we would see is the non-luxury cars would just not exist anymore. And then entry-level luxury cars would also probably not exist because the profit margins are just not big enough to account for the tariffs, and they're not big enough to start off with to make it so that it incentivizes the manufacturer to bring those cars over the US. And so what these luxury manufacturers most likely do is just sell their high-line cars in the US market because they've got the profit margins, and if they have to increase the price on these vehicles, it's a lot easier. Like if you're selling a $200,000 car and you got to increase the price by $50,000, that's a ton of money. That sounds like a ton of money to a regular person. But the type of person that's going out and buying a $200,000 car, they don't really care. And especially if that makes that car even more rare, they're more likely to buy it because it's more of a status symbol because you can't get it, right? It's more expensive. And so I actually don't see this having an impact on a lot of the luxury cars, well, I should say the higher line luxury cars from Europe. But I could see this getting rid of the non-luxury and getting rid of the entry-level luxury. Rather than an increase in price, they'll just stop selling them. I mean, we saw this with light-duty pickup trucks when the chicken tax was released. Manufacturers just either decided to move their production to North America, or they just don't sell that pickup truck in the US market. The Toyota Hilux is a great example of that. Now this leads us to the last one, which is Canada, Mexico. Now this is the one that'll have the biggest impact in my personal opinion, not only because geographically they're very close to us, but like I said, you have cars that cross borders multiple times because we are so close geographically, and you have parts that also cross multiple borders. And so things could get expensive really fast. On top of that, a lot of cars that are produced with this partnership are non-luxury cars. These are cars that don't have big profit margins. And so manufacturers will be left with one of two choices. Either move the production to the US and hope that you can produce it at a low enough rate so you don't have to increase prices too much, or try to increase prices, but like I said, market dynamics, supply and demand. You can only charge so much for a particular type of car. Nobody's gonna pay $50,000 for a Honda Civic. So if you can only make a Honda Civic at a cost of $50,000, you just exit the market. So I could see this pushing us into a situation where certain cars exit the market. And so this leads us into the conclusion. If we look at things objectively, I think this is the logical conclusion that we can come to. First off, these tariffs will have a bigger impact on non-luxury cars than they will have on luxury cars. the price might increase across the board with all vehicles, but it's going to have a much bigger impact on the non-luxury segment. And the biggest impact that I see is car availability. If automakers cannot sell cars at a price point that makes sense for the segment they compete within, they're probably just going to get rid of that car and focus on other models that they can continue to make a profit on, that they can continue to price at where it makes logical sense. And I think this is also going to be the death of just affordable cars in general. We've already seen this trend go on for about 20 to 30 years where there are fewer and fewer affordable cars available. And this is just a continuation of that trend. There are basically no cars that are under $20,000 now. I mean, you could get a Mitsubishi Mirage just a couple of years ago, or Nissan Versa. Mitsubishi Mirage is now dead. And the Versa, it sounds like that one's going to go. And Nissan might not even last for that much longer at this rate. And then if you go up in price, sub $30,000, there's not that many cars left. And so I think that the biggest impact will actually be an extermination of these sub $30,000 cars rather, where manufacturers will just decide that it doesn't make any sense. They can't build them cheap enough to make it so they can make profit on those cars. And so they'll just exit. And this will naturally push up the price of cars. Prior to the pandemic, the average brand new car was under $40,000. Now the average brand new car is almost $50,000. The average brand new car, I bet, in the next few years, if all of this is implemented, will be over $50,000. And that won't be because the expensive vehicles are having huge price increases. It'll simply be because there are no longer affordable cars available, so then the average car price gets pushed up naturally. And so I think that is the most likely outcome, is that manufacturers are not going to just massively increase prices because, again, supply and demand. You either have pricing power or you don't. If you don't have pricing power and you can't make profit on a product, you just don't sell the product. I think that's what's most likely going to happen. And so we're probably going to see the death of affordable cars, and the US car market is basically just going to transform into an expensive luxury car market for new cars. And if someone wants an affordable car, they're going to have to look used. And that's already been a trend, like I said, for the last 5 to 10 years. It's gone that way big time, but it's going to go that way even more so.
So after you heard from the expert opinion, if you're planning to buy cars in America, please do it before May 23rd. Because from that time henceforth, the tariff will take effect. And therefore, it is estimated that the car prices will rise even as much as $12,200. That is pretty high for average American. And therefore, it is very important to consider buying cars earlier. In case probably you have plans to buy cars, maybe you intend to upgrade or to buy a new one. Rush, because the time is going on, and we have a few days to 23rd May. So you can do it before that time, or else you'll really have to pay much, because once these tariffs take effect, prices will just so high. Be it prices of new cars, be it repairs, because as we've discussed earlier, it's going to even affect the car parts. So if maybe you even intend to repair your car, buy a new one, upgrade, you better do it before these tariffs take effect. Because from the standpoint, I don't think if the administration is intending to lower these tariffs before that time. And I will leave the rest for you. Thank you.